Leadership is both an art and a science.
A new silver company for investors, with Keith Neumeyer agreeing to become a major shareholder. Luke Norman, co-founder of Gold Standard Ventures, is the new chairman, and the company has acquired 3 former First Majestic silver properties. To learn more about this must-own silver stock,
go to crushthestreet.com/silver1. That's crushthestreet.com/silver1. And welcome in to crushthestreet.com. I'm joined with Gary Morton, author of an upcoming book, Commanding Excellence, Inspiring Purpose, Passion, and Ingenuity Through Leadership That Matters. A book not yet released will be out in September 2017. This is a leader himself, graduated from West Point with honors, had a 5-year career as a tank officer, and was highlighted as being part of an extraordinary unit that achieved unprecedented results at the U.S. Army's grueling National Training Center. And he's held various responsibilities as a leader and is now inspiring others to do the same. His website is igarymorton.com. Gary, thanks for coming on the show with me today.
Well, thank you, Kenneth, for having me. I'm excited to talk with you here today.
Well, you know what? One of the things that you talk about is getting rid of the participation trophies and how it relates to leadership. And I want to talk about a little bit of your opinion on that. How did you come up with that idea, and how does that relate to developing as a strong leader?
Yeah, well, the 2 leaders and organizations that I focused on in Commanding Excellence were organizations that achieved what most people in their field thought were impossible. And inside them, it was very much a rack and stack. Here's everyone's performance. Here's who was at the top. Here's who is at the bottom. And it was visible. And that drove excellence. So, this idea that everyone gets a trophy, which is popular today, is there's some worth to that from the sense of giving everyone that tried a sense of some ownership in the activity that they tried at. But if you want excellence, you got to rank them. And you got to have winners, and unfortunately, you have people that didn't win. But that hopefully inspires the people that didn't win to strive for that top spot.
That's a good point, and I guess that's how we should all see our failures in life, and not look at our failures as something that keeps us back, but something that we overcome and we break through. But, what's interesting about the trophy example is it kind of creates some sort of image of one-size-fits-all standardized test that either you pass or fail. Now, as a good leader, we are to develop other leaders, and part of that is dealing with everyone's unique sets of strength and weaknesses. And I'm not disagreeing with your analysis on that, but I'm also wanting to kind of look at the other side of the coin here. And part of that is building people up, and maybe it takes one person longer than another to learn something, but getting them through the grueling experience process and the education process to attain a point of confidence and to establish themselves as a successful leader in a specific area. So any comments on that?
Oh, yeah, I think you bring up a good point there. The best leaders, you establish a hierarchy, you reward people that do well, maybe you scold people that don't in that hierarchy. But the best leaders also understand people's individual strengths, and they understand where they would best fit in the organization. So you may have somebody, whether, in that tank battalion, for example, that won every battle at the National Training Center. Well, the company commander of the company that was in charge of leading in our maneuver operations was not going to be the best company commander to be in charge of being the central killing power of the task force. Much like, in a business, you have a lot of folks that, for example, they might be the best sales rep in the world and be at the top of the sales rep rankings. But you may have somebody in the middle of those rankings that isn't necessarily the best rep, but they might be the best manager of reps. and to be able to discern those differences. So, yeah, even in a sense, do you give that person, that sales rep, that's just they're in the middle of the sales rep hierarchy, but they're going to be an outstanding manager? Do you give them a participation trophy? Well, you could phrase it that way, but I think the key is recognizing those individual differences between people and letting folks soar with the strengths that they have.
You know, one of the things that I do in my own house, I mean, I have young kids, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old who I'm not largely communicating with at this point yet. But my 3-year-old, I do. And I tell him, I said, successful people implement and execute. They don't just hear something and put it on the back burner for days and days and weeks and months, because these little things that we put on the back burners, I've learned, become monsters, as if they're like this huge step that we need to take in our life. But when you really sit down, prioritize, put everything on an agenda and execute and implement, these little things get knocked out quick. And successful people implement and execute on a daily basis. And another thing I tell them is have high standards for your life. So any comments on this?
One of the most valuable lessons you get out of the West Point experience for most of us occurs in that first year. And you'll get the advice, and then later you give that advice. But you are so constrained for time in everything that you do, particularly in that first year. You learn this process that it sounds like what you're teaching your kids is, don't put it down, put it away. This idea that you're going to have time later to put it away in the correct place is never going to happen. So instead of putting it down to be dealt with later, just deal with it now and put it away. And found that has been advice and a learning experience that has really helped me throughout my life in doing that. So it's kind of that it is implementing and executing in the moment, because to think that you're going to be able to defer it till later is usually not the best way to manage your day-to-day activities.
One of the concepts you wrote about in the book was unleashing creativity. And I'd like to explore that a little bit with you. I mean, this is something that I struggle with. I'm a newsletter writer. I have to, do podcasts and topics and ideas and writing. Man, and sometimes you just feel dry. It's like, oh man, I feel like I've been talking about this, beating the same drum for a very long period of time. But let's talk about unleashing creativity and its relation to leadership.
Yeah, I think the example of these two leaders is particularly illustrative, and maybe of all the three elements that I talk about in the book that were driving the success of these two organizations, unleashing creativity brought it all together. And for them, there was a few things that they had in common in these organizations, and I think can be useful for any organization or even an individual to try to unleash their own creativity. One is, the resources were available, but they were also constrained. So, in your own day, your own individual day, if you're constrained by time, it may help you use the time that you have more effectively. Secondly, there was this overriding purpose that the creativity was directed toward. These two organizations had an absolute clarity of purpose, and their creative efforts were organized and directed toward helping to achieve that purpose. So, as an individual, if you've got to come up with an idea for writing or an idea for a podcast, and you're in the general purpose of all of your podcasts, well, I think you have a neat name for this one, Across the Street. Maybe that can help incite some ideas of what new may be able to be delivered as part of a podcast. And then within each organization, there was this incredible level of brainstorming that occurred within the organizations themselves. And a lot of it was led by the leader, particularly in the armor battalion. I mean, this leader was exceptional at bringing out the ideas from everyone inside the organization at any level, because he realized that strength of ideation, that ability to come up with something new, isn't necessarily the same thing that's going to cause somebody to be a great company commander. There may be a cook down in the lower echelons of the unit that is much more creative than anybody else in that unit. You want to capture those ideas there. So maybe, Kenneth, in your organization, there might be some folks that you're working with. They're not going to be directing a podcast or whatnot, but they might have those innate creativity or creative strengths that you can capitalize on.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's true. And when I think of people trying to be successful at something, having some sort of success in my own business, I connected with the empowered obsession. The concept of having an obsession about what it is that you're doing. And really, I can't, it's hard to explain to people who want to start a business and kind of do it half-heartedly or part-time or on the side, if you haven't experienced what it takes to really break through and to do everything in your power to build momentum to having success. And that's one of the things that I think is important for leaders to understand, because leadership in different aspects can be duplicated. And once you understand some of these crucial pillars for what it takes to be successful, it can be applied over many different areas. So just some thoughts on this.
Yeah, one of the things that these two leaders did was establish an absolute clarity of purpose within their organization. And that was important. And it provided a understanding of where true north lies throughout this organization. But it really wasn't it wasn't driving things forward until that purpose became an obsession within a large number of folks, a large percentage, if you will, of the organization. And when that happens, then you get everyone driving in the same direction, buying into a goal, and it's just magical, the things that occur. Now, that obsession piece, both of these leaders, they were not normal. And it wasn't normal. The things that the organizations achieved were the top 1% of the top 1%. So, John Brown at Stryker worked harder than anyone else in that company. And there was a lot of people that worked extremely hard. But you'd come home from a overseas trip, and it'd be 12 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, and you'd see one light on in that office at the corporate headquarters, and it'd be John. He was just absolutely obsessed with achieving this 20% growth. And when you gain that kind of obsession and spread it through the organization, it is unbelievably powerful in terms of what that organization can then accomplish. Is that answering your question?
Oh, yeah. No, and I just exploring this concept of being successful. And for me, I'm almost using the word successful and leader interchangeably, because I think one comes with the other. Similar to, if you're going to be in business, you're also going to be a salesman. And I think those again are very interchangeable as well. Of course, we can split hairs exactly what those mean, but in general, leadership, success, this is what we're talking about here today. And I feel like so many times we feel unqualified to enter a new space, and we are afraid to try because maybe we failed and we got burned, and our confidence to succeed is just at extreme lows. But really, confidence in a certain area and for you to become a leader takes experience and knowledge, and for you to have the understanding to have a grasp on what it is that you're trying to lead in. And I just feel like I'd love you to stress the importance of that, if you agree with that, of how important it is to to invest in it, whatever it is that you're trying to lead in, and understand it, be fully educated, and to know it, and how that all comes together in a very symbiotic way with a lot of synergy. And that's how you build that success and momentum in that specific area.
Okay, I think that leadership is both an art and a science, and the art part of it probably for most people comes from who they are as a person, from their family background, from how they grew up, from what they learned from their parents and aunts and uncles and extended family and the environment that they grew up in. But the science part of it can come from a lot of sources that you're not necessarily just given. You study, and it takes work and it takes effort to study leadership and understand what succeeds and what does not succeed in the realms of leadership. And the more people progress in their careers, in my experience, the more they become students of leadership, and they're constantly looking. Those folks that are successful are constantly looking around them to see what's driving the success of others, what's driving success of other organizations, what works for them, what works for their folks that inside their organization, their subordinates, what's not working for their subordinates, because it's leadership can be such a powerful thing within an organization if it's good and leads to success, and can be such a negative thing if it doesn't. But those folks that invest in that science of leadership and really put the effort toward doing it, if you walk into a space that you're unqualified to do, you get that in the Army. You graduate from West Point and you've had a great education and 4 years of college and you've got a BS degree and whatnot, but you're given a tank platoon or an infantry platoon or a military intelligence unit, and you really don't know what to do. I mean, you've got a lot of school learning and whatnot, but there's NCOs in that organization that have been there for 12, 15, 20 years, that really in some ways are much more qualified than you are to lead that. But you've got this background and understanding, if you're going to be successful there, of how organizations lead and how you can work with the people around you and the people in your team to help develop yourself, while at the same time developing them and the team. And it really is, if you can pull all that together, it is an act of science and an act of artistry to do that. And you see the best officers in the military, the best folks in capitalist endeavors as well, are able to pull that all together. So they walk into something new. I walked into Stryker. I knew a little bit about manufacturing, but I had a lot to learn. And I sought out the brilliant people around me, or the people that maybe they weren't that brilliant, but they knew, what a brake press was, how to bend tubes, how to weld, how to do all these things. And you just have conversations with them. And if people are willing to share, if they know that you're open and willing to learn.
Those are good words there, Gary. Gary, I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for the book. I appreciate everything I've learned in it, and I highly recommend people to check it out. Let people know, are people who are interested in it, are they able to pre-order it, and or do they need to wait until September for it to be released?
No, it's available for pre-order today on all the major sites, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It'll be out in electronic form for pre-order as well here on iBooks and Kindle shortly. And, 800 CEO Reads, a bunch of other sites, it is available. If you just search for Commanding Excellence, it'll come up for you.
Awesome. And will you have an audio book?
Well, in the realm of books, if the book is successful and liked, then it usually becomes an audiobook. So my plan is, yes. I think that it is a book that can have, can be worthwhile. I wrote it with an intent to make it a work worth reading. I think that it can do that, and I would expect that there'll be an audiobook in the future as well.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely, Gary. Well, hey, best of luck to you, sir. I appreciate your time on the show today.
Thank you.